Okay, so I've wanted to do this for a while. I don't know, maybe it's been 8 months ago. I bought a extra motherboard for my G4 because I thought maybe at the time there was something funky with it. So I was able to get one pretty cheap, and I'll include some links if they're still selling, something comparable to it. But it was inexpensive enough that it made it worthwhile. And that's kind of one of the things is that if you are contemplating replacing your motherboard, let's say you got a unit that everything appears to be okay, memory, processor, heatsink, the whole thing, it just doesn't turn on. It just doesn't boot or gives some errors or whatever. You have to see, is it going to be worth the price of getting the motherboard and that, and just the overall hassle, just swapping everything, as opposed to finding yet another unit, maybe that is bare bones, and you just need to, move the parts from one to the other. Now, the nice thing with getting the motherboard is then you don't end up with an extra case and everything else, but then again, sometimes having the extra case, either way. So what I want to do today is I'm going to take out all the parts from this, remove the motherboard, put this motherboard in, put all the components, and boot up, and hopefully we'll have a nice working unit. This one already works, but I'd like to make sure that this is also going to work once we get everything together. I tried this way back when, kind of, sort of on the fly, just doing a couple tests with it. It did seem to come up, so at least I feel like I don't have a bogus one. And this most likely came out of a working unit as opposed to just completely fresh motherboard from the factory. But we'll see. So let's go through. Actually, one thing I wanted to mention is that before, like we do all this, how do you get a motherboard, or how do you know which one to purchase? Oftentimes, somewhere near where the memory is, there'll be a sticker that will have part numbers on it. Let me see if we can get that up there. Now, I tried using this part number, and I'm pretty sure I tried this part number. And I ended up finding the less expensive using that secondary number versus the first. So, try them both. On some of the boards, it'll even have two numbers. One will say like no da 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 da, and the other one might say win. I'm guessing it has to do something to do whether the Windows key is burned into the motherboard or not. But I would try both sets of numbers and see which one you're able to find at the best price. Make sure that they do say that it's from a working unit. You definitely want to look inside of here as best you can on the picture and make sure there aren't any broken pins or bent ones. And also, of course, when you get it, open it up and make sure that everything looks good. Because if you've got broken pins, there's a good chance that it's just not going to boot, or you're going to have issues later. And the whole reason that you're doing this replacement is for that. So let's go through the steps in terms of getting this guy into here. Just to clarify too, this is an HP EliteDesk G4 Mini 35 watt. And that's kind of important too, because with the G4s, there is some difference between the 65 watt motherboard and the 35 watt. And in particular, the difference, let's see, right here. The 35 watt will have this here, the 65 will not. The 35 watt is going to have this connector for the extra GPU that you can add to this. So that's important if you're going from a 35 to to a 35. If you've got a 65 and you go, hey, I'd like to have maybe all the neat features of the 35, you can do that too. The only problem is I'm pretty sure that this, you're going to have to look at the pictures. I'm on the 65 watt. I think this is just missing as opposed to the whole being moved. Because I know when I was looking at the MP9s, I thought, oh, well, why don't I take this guy and put it into my MP9, and now I've got another EliteDesk as opposed to the the retail MP9. But no, on its motherboard, this hole is kind of covered up, and then it's actually higher up here, so I wouldn't have been able to fit this into it. Essentially, what I want to do is first take out all the parts off of here and make it look like an empty bare bones system. And then I'll show a couple others that we need to disconnect. And then we'll just do the reverse. We'll take out the motherboard, we'll put in the fresh one, and then we'll put all the parts back in there. Let's start with taking out the caddy. Use the handy top to my case to hold everything. Okay, we've got our caddy. We'll put that to the side. If we had a M.2 in either location, we want to remove that. In this particular case, we want to remove the cable because we're going to be transferring it to the new motherboard. Our assumption is that when we get this motherboard, it's going to be completely bare bones. Nothing on there, just a straight old motherboard. So we're going to need to transfer this. We've got our Wi-Fi card. In my particular case, the antenna are kind of back here because a lot of times I'm playing with this and disconnecting. But if they were connected, you'd want to take them off of the two places right here. But we're going to remove the card right now. You want to bring over the screw because a lot of times that's also going to be missing on the new system. Let's take off the heat sink because we're going to need to get to the CPU and also the memory. So let's first take off the fan. Move this here. It's going to be a little easier, I think, getting to that fan after we take out the heat sink. We'll take out our memory. Okay, we've got our heat sink. This has fairly new thermal, so I'm not going to worry about putting new stuff on, but you may want to, again, depending on how old your unit is. Disconnect the fan. Put that to the side. Okay, before I take the CPU, we want to disconnect any of the flex I/O that we might have. And make sure to save the little screws. These pop up, usually just, I don't have the biggest nails, but big enough where you can kind of get under them a little bit just to kind of break the sort of the seal there. And sometimes you have to do it on both holes and then just pull it out. Okay. We'll actually want to take the battery. Kind of want to get it underneath. You push in a little bit. Try to get underneath it. There. Now I've got the CPU. Undo the latch. Got to be a little careful since you're going to be dealing, you already have the thermal paste on here, and that tends to get everywhere. You might do better to, clean it with some isopropyl first. That way you don't have to worry about getting any residue on the new motherboard. Okay. We'll close this back up so that way, because this, in my case, this motherboard is still good, so I'm going to, keep it around for something else. Now, we need to disconnect the speaker. Spudger to get to it there. It's a little tight. There we go. You want to just kind of look through. I mean, there are documentation, there is documentation from HP, shows you, what to disconnect, et cetera, but in general, all of these, the steps I'm going through here are very similar to what you would go with the G2, G3, et cetera. Just realized I left the funky 2230 screw, so we'll take that out. Use our same Torx we use, the T15 that we used to take out the heat sink. We've got 1, 2, 3 screws here that we want to take out. This might be a little tight because most likely they've never been removed. They look, near as I can tell, identical to the ones used for the SATA cable. Close, but I would keep them separate. So, okay, and our last one. And again, this may be a little tight because of the fact that it's pretty fresh. So let's see. Okay, if it feels a little stiff, what I did was I got my finger underneath here slightly, so that way, and then I could press upward a little bit to help sort of break the seal and be able to pull it out. So we want to kind of lift it up. All right. Now, one other thing that they talk about, let's look to see if this one has it. Actually, this one doesn't. They talk about that sometimes you'll have a thermal pad. This is the Q370 chipset. So there'll sometimes be a a thermal pad on here, and you're supposed to take that off and transfer it to the other one. But since we don't have it, we're not going to worry about it. Okay, so this is our old guy. Let's go get the new one. Just realized there is the thermal pad. Okay, well, I'm not going to worry because it looks like it, is it stuck on there? Let's see. Maybe I'll just leave it there because it's just going to go right back into the same spot. Okay, so let's align it. So again, we've got, this is if you're curious to see what it looks like in terms of how those antenna are connected. So here's the main external one. You've got one here, and then the second one goes to the front, and that's where the second guy. Okay, so let's orient it. One way to do it is you've got this little notch, and that kind of goes right where the speaker is. And we do want it sort of tilted in. Make sure the speaker connector is up. Make sure that the, I'm going to go ahead and pull these up a little bit so that way they don't accidentally get caught underneath. Okay. That's going. That's going. And that's a nice fit. Okay. So now let's reverse. And looks like our screw's in the right place. Okay, now we're going to put the 3 screws back in. There's no real order to it, but I'm going to put them in a little kind of, I guess, sort of crosshatch here. Connected. I'm going to connect the speaker back. Let's put our lithium battery. Slides in there. Snap. Okay. Let's do the CPU. Okay. And as we remember, we've got the arrow. And we want to line that up with the arrow that's on the CPU. Okay. Lock it down. Let's get our fan. Fan's going to go like this, so we'll just kind of reconnect. When it comes to those fan headers, I always like to have as much room as I can to get them in, because when it's tight squeeze, I always get kind of turned around, you know, which direction to put the guy in. So let's get our heat sink. Let's put our RAM. Actually, before we do that, I probably could have put this in a little earlier, but we'll go ahead and put it in now. So you need to position it, the screws, and then push in. I don't know if, oh, see, you hear the pop pop as you're putting it in. Let's add our RAM. Make sure it's seated. Nice good click. I'm gonna put the Wi-Fi card back in, but I'm not going to attach the antenna because I'm sure people watching are much more gifted at it than myself. I always have trouble popping it onto these there. Now you've got the it comes, just so you know, you've got, you know, kind of the primary and secondary, and you just want to make sure, like, this one is number 1 and this is number 2, so that way you know, when you connect them, you put them in. I don't know if there's such a huge difference. I mean, either way, it's an antenna. It just has to do whether it's from the front or the back. You may want to, if you actually are using your Wi-Fi card, is perhaps before you or after you disconnect, maybe mark them in such a way so you know how they went on to the Wi-Fi card. Make sure you put the right one on. Okay, let's put at this point, of course, if I had M.2 drives, I would stick those in. And these kind of slide. You have to kind of get that fan cable out of the way. There you go. Okay. Okay. Made a mistake. Needed to put the SATA cable in. It's a lot easier putting it in without the caddy in place. So let's get we got our SATA cable. What we want to do is take the plastic, the white, just make sure it's sort of up. That way this will slide in. I'll put one screw in, and then I like to get these the SATA cable locked in so it doesn't I don't accidentally pull on it and it pops out again. And we'll put our drive and we'll see what happens. So let's get some power and see what we've got if it boots up. Okay, it's booting up. It first came up to a screen just saying that the real-time clock was wrong and that you'd have to set it through the operating system. That makes sense because the board's been sitting around and nothing, happened with it. So let's see what happens if we can get in. Well, that looks pretty good. We are in Windows, and if we look, let's check out System Info. Okay, we look in System Info. Let's see, we've got our 8500T. It's a 600, 600 G4. Let's see, what do we got? It should show. We've got 16 gig of memory installed. That looks pretty good. Most likely the information on, like, let's say the some of the settings are probably not the same, like serial number and so forth, which I think I would like to make sure that the internals match the externals, meaning, if I look on the bottom and I see that it's a particular one. So I'll show you how that is done. Before we do that, I think, though, I want to update the BIOS and get that up to date. It looks like it's back in 2019. Okay, so we're going to boot back into the BIOS. Let's do update system BIOS. Continue. Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, wow. Let's do it the latest and greatest, and then we'll take care of some of the other things. Well, I obviously got the motherboard replaced, but I was really hoping to be able to change the settings on it so that it looked like the old motherboard, like the serial number, the feature bytes, all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, everything I've tried doesn't seem to allow me to make the change. Everything comes back as read-only. So if you get a true fresh motherboard, probably from HP, there's a new menu choice that will pop up that says set machine unique data, and that allows you to set all the values. Now, I'm getting, of course, hand-me-down, secondhand motherboard that works fine. But the problem is that that menu isn't there, and it already has all its own settings. So I tried the HP BIOS tool. Everything I did said that the stuff that I wanted to change was read only. I just looked around. So I'm just going to go with what I've got and not worry about it. If someone out there has figured out a way to do this, I've tried the Control A thing. That's one person, I think, that had a G1 tried that, and they're able to get into the part that has system IDs. But no, everything I've tried with password, without password, etc. So, but if someone has a solution, please let me know, and I'll give it a try on my converted one here and see how things work out.